Ready? Hey! Hey, thank you for joining us today. And we are on the road in South Carolina, and we're in Spartanburg at Milliken's headquarters. This is a pretty fascinating place. If you've never been here, and you probably haven't, these folks make fabric, all kinds of fabric, and it's everywhere. They say that you touch 50 Milliken products a day, and if you're a firefighter, we touch everything, so we probably touch 150. But it's in carpet, it's your clothes, it's the seats in your car, it's the chairs, it's your bedding. It's amazing. So we're going to go through a couple of things that they do, and I'm going to introduce my buddies here with me. This is the team today for the Hangout. We got Big Mike Dugan back in New York. He's going to be joining us. We're going to take a little tour of what they call their Innovation Center. Now, this company's been around for 150 years, right? So they started off like a mercantile shop, right? Like a haberdashery. And the cat kind of recognized where things were going, so he bought a fabric mill, and then he redesigned that. And this is a family-owned company. The same family, the Milliken family, owns this company. American-made company, American products, manufactured right here. Fantastic group of people. And they're in the fire industry now. You may not have heard of them, but most of us are wearing their product in our gear. And they're coming up with all kind of innovation that we're going to talk about. There's also been a lot of questions in the fire service the last couple of weeks and months about off-gassing and other issues. And so we've got real chemists with us here today who are really great guys who've actually written a fantastic white paper that's on the Milliken site, and we'll also put it on our site so you can download it. That answers a lot of your questions about what's going on with off-gassing and gear today and how they understand the situation at the moment. But they're really decent guys. I've been hanging out with them all day. They're sober, so at least last time I smelled their breath. So we're gonna have a great conversation. But real quick, I'll introduce real quick. This is Jeff, my good buddy Jeff, and he's kind of the business side of the house. Good guy. I've known him for about 15 years, and we've been hanging around, kicking around the fireside. Okay, pay attention. This guy's name is Shulong. So that's how you remember his name, Shulong. And he's a chemist. He's a smart guy. Then we got Dave, not a chemist, not a smart guy. Another good guy. So Dave is going to be joining in. Dave, have you been with Milliken now for?
Started my career with Milliken in 2002.
2002. So these are longtime people with this company. And then finally, my buddy Drew, who's a real chemist. I've been beating Drew up. You know how I can be. I've been beating Drew up all day. He's been giving me the tour. He's been educating me. And I'll tell you what, this guy can make really complicated stuff really simple. And that's the sign of a really smart guy. He's not going to buffalo us. So if you've got good questions, remember hashtag FE Talk, I think it is, Mike, right? Hashtag FE Talk. Mike will be checking out Twitter. So if you got a question you want to ask, we got two chemists, we got two old buddies of mine. We're going to be talking about protective clothing, bunker gear, station wear, and some of the other stuff that Milliken's involved in that you may not know about, and where we may be going as an industry, right? So let's start right over here. I don't know, Steve, if you can get any closer, kind of a little tied up with some wires there. But what are we looking at here? This is some pretty cool stuff. And Drew was showing me some of this stuff earlier.
In addition to fabric for the fire service market, we also make a lot of fabric for the military. So this is a Nomex flight suit. And as Bobby was saying earlier, it feels a little different than the Nomex flight suits he remembers, right?
Oh, absolutely. So everybody in USAR, when we first took over the USAR program, we got all the old flight suits, remember? And you would put them on, and you felt like a cardboard cutout, because that's how they wore, right? They were horrible. They chafed, and they left, you know, and then when you went to the beach, you just had marks. It was horrible. but you know what I'm talking about. They were very uncomfortable. They didn't breathe well. This stuff is nice. This is nice.
We have a special technology called Soft Touch, which allows us to use high pressure water to really soften up the fabric, make it feel really nice.
That's really cool. So you inject high pressure water, softens the fabric, so we get Nomex. Yeah, it feels like cotton, right? Yeah. This is pretty cool. CBRN suit, right? You want to talk about Shulong?
Yeah. So this suit really protected our warfighter against chemical, biological weapons. So a lot of the chemical or biological agent cannot go through the garment, and also have flame resistant property as well. So when you wear this suit, you can jump in seawater and the protection still works. So really incorporate a lot of the Milliken technologies.
Fantastic. And so, okay, so now it's going to get fun, right? Now it gets weird. And So I'm gonna pull Dave in. All of these things you see behind me here, and some of this stuff is fascinating. Whether it's what we, my generation, we call it Tupperware. I don't know if I have to say that anymore, if it's trademarked or whatever. I got 2 pensions and a bad attitude. but the storage, there's a container store where they make, right? So that's probably another trademark I just screwed up. But these guys developed a technology that lets you see through it.
That's right.
Which is pretty cool. So that's one thing they do. When we're eating at Steak and Shake at Indy, and the waiter comes over and hands you your cloth napkin, these guys make all that, and it's called
Napery.
Napery. It's called Napery.
I'm not sure they have those there at Steak and Shake probably.
They don't have those.
A
little higher end, but cloth napkins, they make just about all of them, and it gets even more interesting. This was a cool product. Okay, so we were hanging out, and I said, tell me some of the stuff you got, right? So they said, okay, you're going to get dirty touching this. So what did I do right away? How dirty am I going to get? So you got to check this out, right? So Drew was telling me, this is cloth concrete. And if they get this wet, in about an hour, it hardens up like this. Concrete, right? Which is pretty freaking amazing. And you can shape it while it's hardening up. So think about your USAR deployments. Think about technical rescue stuff where you may need to take something and form it specifically in order to achieve a function or an access point or harden something. You can do it with this stuff, and they have it. We were talking about roads in Puerto Rico. We were talking about creating
gullies in water. If you got to make a gully and you need some temporary water flow changes, you can quickly whip one together with that concrete cloth.
Art.
Now I got chemists busting my. Anyway, but think about building ramps where we got to launch boats where we don't have them, right? Think about any place where we could get jammed up, bogged down. We can make concrete now in an hour. My challenge to you guys is figure out how I can make concrete in 10 minutes. Because I don't generally have an hour, although sometimes I do. So that's some of the other stuff. We're going to keep walking along here. This is really cool stuff. Your luggage, and they were showing me how this is all kinds of fibers that they put together. All of this stuff here, whether it's your pine sol, your downy, your something that Milliken makes is in every single one of these products. These guys are touching your lives in ways that you just can't imagine, and it's really cool. Milliken, go to their website. They've got some other cool stuff we're going to talk about in a little while, but they've got like a management and a safety program that's phenomenal. And they're also considered one of the most ethical corporations in the world. If not, did you win first place or you just one of them?
It's one of the world's most ethical companies.
One of the world's most ethical companies, which really matters because we're one of the world's most ethical professions. And these guys are the kind of people who understand guys and gals like us. So let's look at a couple other things before we get bogged down with gear. Follow me, camera dude, which is actually Steven. Steven's a really good guy. I've been tormenting Steven all morning too, so I apologize in advance. But you see all kinds of product up here. This is just like the coolest camo ever, man. Could you imagine sitting in your deer blind with that? You'd be like the envy of every guy who goes to Bass Pro,
Seal.
Right, like that's like outdoor man on steroids. That's awesome. So, and look at this, athletic gear, right? All your athletic gear that you're wearing, all the stuff for the colleges, again, our hunting gear. These guys make fabric that's cool in the summer, warm in the winter, pulls moisture away, and they're going to talk to you a lot about it. But real quick, I'm going to bring them over because they're really proud of this. Now, as you know, we work out all the time. Firefighters like to work out, and we sweat, and we stink. But what they're doing with fabric is pretty cool. Tell us about the bio stuff, Drew. That was pretty.
Sure.
This is cool stuff.
This fabric has a finish on we call Visa Endurance.
Okay.
The Visa is a finish that allows polyester to wick moisture, transport moisture away from your body, so it doesn't stay in between your body and the garment. And the endurance part of that is a silver-based antimicrobial. So it's an antimicrobial that it kills the bacteria that causes bad odors. So you can sweat all you want, you don't smell it. I've got a running shirt like this, and I run, and I can run 5-6 miles, put that in my bag, take it out the next day, it doesn't stink. My socks will smell like you wouldn't believe, but that shirt doesn't stink at all. Really works.
I was going to mention the socks. So, okay, Dugan, you're like this, Mikey. My big Irish head. That doesn't work, does it? It looks like a bowler. but even hats, right? The fabric for all the teams except the Yankees.
The Yankees, yeah.
So very, very cool. A couple other things we're going to go through is kind of quick, and then we'll show you some of the stuff that's obviously career specific for us. Fishing poles, cups, plasticware.
This is Drew's special one. Drew has a lot to do with this one.
With this one right here?
Hurricanes.
It's a reinforcement for asphalt shingles.
Okay.
You put nails into the strip, reinforces it, and the strip underneath will adhere to the strip on the shingle that's underneath that. So it prevents wind from blowing underneath it as it glues down.
Category 5
So
hurricane.
these shingles are guaranteed for a Category 5 hurricane.
Wow.
So if you have a Category 5 hurricane and these are on your roof, wherever your roof is, that's where your shingles are going to be. I can't guarantee your roof.
Okay, so here, so this is kind of interesting. So these are why these hangouts matter, right? One of the things we do is cut these roofs, right? So what would be interesting to do with this product, and if we get a chance, maybe we'll talk to our friends here, is see how it affects saw blades, right? So if we're up there with a chainsaw or warthog or rotary saw, how is this going to gum up a blade? What's it going to do? Is it going to affect it in any way? Which would be just interesting to know, or not. It may be moot, but we don't know. And I've never seen it before, so that's really cool. Which is why we hang out with people who are smarter than us. So we keep walking around. We got shoes. This was pretty cool. They built this when they had the big oil spill, and this soaked up oil when they had the Deepwater Horizon accident, which is pretty amazing. And for those that are NASCAR fans, they actually create a stabilizer and skid plates up on the front so that our NASCAR drivers are better protected, and we don't have to worry about shards of, it used to be the old carbon fiber stuff. And that would come off like glass, right? And it wasn't just dangerous to the drivers and the fans, but firefighters work on those NASCAR races, and firefighters work on those IndyCar races. So you actually made the environment safer for us as well, because our crews are right there on the track, supporting the extrication issues and rescuing drivers and things of that nature. So it's really cool. And the thing that was like jumped out at me that I thought was just so, it kind of showed the wild diversity of this company. Juice boxes. Now I'm a grandpa, so I'm pretty familiar with these things because kids consume these things like nuts. And it's one piece of material that you guys design, and they fold it over, they put the juice in it, and they seal it, which is radically cool. And when you think about deployments, when we go out on a USAR deployment, or even just keeping some kind of beverage available for ourselves that wouldn't get contaminated, this is important stuff for the fire service. So, not just for our grandchildren, but for us. I gotta figure out how it goes back down there. Which I'll screw it up. All right, one last thing. This is pretty cool. We're gonna head in here to look at some bandaging. All right, still with us? We'll stop moving around here and say, come on over, everybody. Come in here. This is important stuff. Where's Shulong and Drew and Davey? All right. Okay. We all know there's a pretty cool movement right now called Stop the Bleed, and what they're trying to do is raise money to get first aid kits, basic first aid kits with bandages, because we know that when someone gets cut, regardless of the cause, whether it's a bullet wound, whether it's a stab wound, whether it's a broken glass from an accident, the faster we can stop the bleed, the better. They're making fabrics that stop the bleed better. So why don't you tell us a little bit about what we're looking at here?
All right, these types of bandages are really for wound care that combine both an antimicrobial to prevent infection, so a much higher level of antimicrobial than for odor control, plus moisture management, so that the fabric that is used for these wound dressings is 2-layer, so it allows moisture to go through the first layer and spread out on the second layer, not come back through. So it keeps the wound bed nice and moist without creating adhesions to the wound, so when you take the bandage off, you don't reopen the wound. And it's been really life-changing for people with hard-to-heal wounds, especially burn wounds.
Wow.
Very, very important for burns. We've done a lot of clinical trials, like Walter Reed, with military, and it's for certain types of wounds, it's just life-changing.
Yes.
So
one product is very good at kind of make the blood coagulate and stop the bleeding. That's one of them. Then there is another product is designed for chronic wound, the wound that will not heal for months, so that can manage the bioburden, remove all the bacteria away from the wound, give the wound a chance to heal. So we have quite a wide range of product for
So-
burn wound, for chronic wound, for acute wound.
And I'm gonna ask my Milliken friends here to take a hard look at our Bird's Eye View project, folks. That's Ryan Parrott's our founders, a former Navy SEAL, and it's all about burnt firefighters, burnt law enforcement officers, and burnt military people.
Yeah.
Ryan was a SEAL who got burnt, subsequently started this foundation, and does great stuff. And we're glad to have people like Milliken who come to FDIC and support Bird's Eye View and support everything that we're doing there. And burn care is really, really important to the fire service, and not just for us, but we see the poor folks that suffer burns, and they're generally young and old, and it's life changing. And anything we can do to make their lives, less painful and help them heal faster, that's God's work, without a doubt. And so
Bobby, I'd like
we're
to
doing that.
mention that this is a pad that goes on the burn wound. So when you go to a burn center, so this is the pad that they can lie on top, and you see this is the layer that prevents the wound from sticking because they have a lot of fluid coming
Sure.
out of the wound. So this is specially designed to take the fluid away and not allow the wound to stick to the pad.
The sheets or whatever
Yeah,
they're like.
it's a special
Wow.
designed burn bag.
Stuff to be thinking about if you're the guy ordering stuff or the gal ordering stuff in your organization. We're going to come back over. We're going to switch cameras real quick, and we're going to take a look at some gear. And then we're going to talk about spec-ing gear. We're going to talk about what's going on in the fire service. And we got the right guys to do it. And again, if you go to Milliken, is it Milliken.com? Google Milliken, go to their website. They've got a great paper you can download about gear. They've got all kinds of stuff to read, all kinds of stuff for you to know. But when we hop in here, whoever wants to come in here with me and talk about what we're looking at here, and then we're going to sit down and bring Mike into the conversation and talk gear. So what are we looking at? Dave?
Sure. So as you mentioned earlier, Chief, we are in the military. We've been servicing our U.S. military as well as our friendly foreign military for a number of decades. Obviously, we do that in the FR materials as well as non-FR, so all the dress uniform we make for the U.S. military, and then we're also actively involved in the gear that they would wear, their PPE they would wear outside the wire as well. Most recently, we just won the FRAC PANT, so the very large program for the U.S. Army. Very excited about that product. And as you can see, one of the brand names that we have for our military is also ResQ. So we've kind of shared that, and there's a reason behind that. You'll see here that for the fire service, we've got our ResQ logo. It's a little bit different than that of the military brand, but the fact is that there are similar needs from the military and the fire service. And so we see a lot of synergies between those two industries. Obviously, there's a lot of firefighters, as you know, that are former military. And so these needs are somewhat similar, although we do know that there are hazards that are different between each of those professions. So it's our goal and it's really our mission to make sure that when we go into a fire department, it's about finding out what needs they have and what hazards they have that they're going to be facing, so that we make sure that they're in the right garments with the right fabrics. That's where we come in to play. As you mentioned, now that we're in this fire service space, I get asked all the time when I walk into a fire department, what is it the Milliken's going to bring to the table? And my easiest first response is really, we want to do two things. We want to educate and we want to innovate. And so we can't do the education and the innovation without the unique insights that the fire departments give us firsthand. And so it's really opening up that dialogue and that conversation with firefighters to understand where the gaps are and what the problems that they're facing are, so that we can come back and Shulong and Drew and put these guys, to work on the next innovations for Milliken.
And Milliken makes the fabric, and I'll beat up our manufacturers a little bit. Our companies that provide us our gear, whether it's Pipperville or Bopperville or Kipperville or Copperville, whoever's gear you're buying, right? I like this functionality, right? And station wear is traditional. I get it. We need it. But when you look at the amount of pockets, the fact that we put Velcro here, the look here, just to me, and obviously not digicam, but anything we can have to make us look like firefighters. And also, it gives us that added layer of protection when we're underneath the car. I can have my tools in my pockets here. I can have my pencil here, my clipboard. And if it gets dirty or it gets blood on it or has to be washed, I can pull my Velcro off, get another set out, put my Velcro back on, and I'm back in business. I don't have anything against this, our traditional station wear, which is very important, and it looks great. But I want to move towards a more utilitarian product. And so I always talk about it. I figure I'd talk about it again because I can. But I think that's where we're heading in the future in a lot of ways. And you know, 90%, 95% of what we do in many departments is not firefighting. So our gear should be kept clean and ready to go for when we go downrange to fight fire, not to medical calls and extrication calls and everything else that we do. Whereas a good set of BDUs would work really, really well. And no disrespect to the traditional look, I get it, I'm a traditional guy, but I much prefer the utility uniform, the fatigue uniform concept. So I'm really glad to see that we have a company that's already in that sphere that can help our vendors kind of pick up on that idea. And then this is station wear, traditional station wear, fire resistive, very well made, great product, very comfortable. This is kind of interesting, EMS gear, and this is specifically for bloodborne and things of that nature, correct? And kind of a neat set of gear there. And you know, here you go with just another look, another style. And then tell me about what we're looking at here.
Sure, this is the new TechGen 71 outer shell. This was launched into the market July of last year, so it's not quite even a year old into the marketplace. But really, when we set out with this design, and when I talked about designs from a fabric standpoint, not necessarily from a garment standpoint, but the design of the project was really around how do we help firefighters combat heat stress and heat exhaustion. And so we wanted to make the most breathable product possible. And when we looked at this, again, it wasn't just what can we do for the outer shell. It was let's look at it as a total system. So obviously, as an outer shell, that's important to optimize the outer shell, but you've got to make sure that you're not doing something to sub-optimize the rest of the system. So we had to make sure that the thermal liner, moisture barrier, and the outer shell all work perfectly together to optimize the benefit for the firefighter. Because at the end of the day, you can do whatever you want with an outer shell, but if it doesn't make sense to the firefighter, it's really not worth even designing or putting into the market.
And Dave dropped a couple of words there that as firefighters, we need to become a lot more familiar with. This is a system. It's not a jacket. It's not like we're going to, you know, what is it, Men's Warehouse, right? You know, yeah, that's not what this is. It's a system. And that system has inputs that matter, right? Where you do most of your work, what your temperatures normally are, the conditions you're going to be in, how much it wicks, how much it prevents heat from coming in, right? So all of those things matter. And you have a voice in that. Whether you're buying it from any of the people out there who make our gear, the folks that supply the fabric want you to know that you have a choice. And that choice matters. So if what you see on these good folks' website makes sense to you and you want that in your gear, just bring it forward. You don't have to, it's not like you have to buy it off the rack. That's not how this works. No one's sitting with 500 sets of gear to just sell you. When you put the order in, they make it. And they buy the fabric from these good folks based upon your specification. So we're going to sit down, we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about some of the issues that are there today. And we're going to grab some seats real quick. Mike, what do you think so far? How are we doing? Why don't you fire that up for me, Steve?
I'm doing great, Bobby. Thank you. I do.
Hang on, Mike. We're not hearing you yet, bro. Mike,
okay.
Tech guys. You there, Mike?
You got me now.
Beautiful. Gotcha. All right.
I have a question for our tech guys. One of the questions is going to be on the bloodborne. I saw they had the EMS gear, but coming from the fire department side of things, where we're doing first responder EMS, are they working on, or have they come up with station wear that can be bloodborne? Because we're not supposed to go into the places wearing our bunker gear because of all the contaminants if we've been crawling down a hallway. So is there something, does the station wear give us any bloodborne capabilities?
So you want to take that, or you want me to take it?
Yeah, well, I can start it, and Drew, you can chime in to help. Yeah, bloodborne passaging is definitely a concern. Milliken really a fabric manufacturer. We understand the material, we understand bloodborne passaging. We do sell fabric, goes into military, workwear, and medical application to really protect people from the hazard of viruses, bloodborne, bacteria, and dangerous material. Now, currently we don't have. I don't think anybody has stationwear that have dark packaging, full protection like a turnout gear.
That's right, or an NFPA 1999 type medical suit.
Yeah, correct.
There isn't that I'm aware of sitting here today.
Correct, but we do have technology that we know how to control certain material that we have commercial that has antiviral property and antibacterial properties, have fluid barrier. So it's just a matter of us looking at that opportunity and see what we can put together to really to address that need.
And of course, when you're looking at barrier materials like that, you have a barrier to prevent blood and fluids from going through. Therefore, you really decrease the air permeability of the fabric. So you really have to be careful to balance the protection you get from bloodborne pathogens with the added heat stress of having a barrier product that you can't sweat through.
Right, just like our gear, right? There's that trade-off.
That's right.
It's like a running shoe. You have a great running shoe, a good basketball shoe, then you have a cross trainer. So what do you want?
Right. But remember, it's hashtag FE Talk, right, Mike? And Mike's watching it on his phone. That's why we're here. We're not here to. These guys aren't trying to sell you anything. That's not what they do. They provide fabric and technology and support and research to the folks who make our stuff. But if we don't ask the questions, like Mike just did, then we're not going to ever get the products that we really want. We're never going to get the protection that we feel we need. And finally, it's our fire service. We have to take it back. And Tommy Brennan told us that 20 years ago, and it's just as true today. If you're waiting for somebody to tell you what you need or develop some standard or some enlightened, bureaucrat somewhere, it ain't going to happen because they're not doing what you do. You've got skin in the game. And Mike just said, hey, we go into places where there's blood and there's bacteria and there's stuff that we're not protected from yet. And maybe it's high time we were. But you guys need to hear it. So remember, it's hashtag, or I heard a guy the other day call it pound FE Talk, which I kind of dig, man, right? So pound FE Talk. And send your questions. Mike will be screening them to get them out there. So let's talk a little bit about one of the big questions in the fire service today. It's out there: gear off-gassing and chemical additives to gear. Big controversy. It's out there. We're talking about cancer in the fire service. We get it. Cancer is a real issue to us. There are acquirable cancers that we get via exposure. We understand that. We understand that there are cancers that we know through Dr. Daniel's work we're at a higher propensity to develop due to exposure. They're called acquirable cancers. They're not genetic. They're not something we would naturally get through normal activity, but they're a direct result of being a firefighter. So we're developing products that contain additives, if you will, fabrics that help defend us against those contaminants. At the same time, the question has arisen, are the things we're adding to those fabrics also contributing to our health and welfare and potential illness? PFOAs, long chain Cs, which is chemistry, right? And I don't want anybody's head to explode. Basically, well, honestly, it was hard for me to wrap my head around it, and we're all trying to pay more attention to it now. So let's get right to the beginning so everybody can follow the conversation. What is a PFOA? What's the history of it? What is a long chain C? What's the history of it? How does that relate to gear today? And what do we understand? And these are, honest to God, these are the two guys that wrote the white paper that I referenced earlier that I want you to read. They're also available. You go to the website and send them a question. If this isn't clear, send them a question and they'll answer it, right? They'll answer it. They'll take the time to get back to you. So what is a PFOA? What's a long chain C? Who's using it? Where is it? When did it happen? And what should we know and what can we do about it?
That's what you want.
I'll go and start. So the direct answer is PFOA stands for perfluorooctanoic acid. Hope that's clear now.
Much more clear.
No, seriously. So it's a molecule that's a building block to make repellent coatings.
Okay.
So it's a building block that when you put a bunch of them together and you polymerize it, you get coatings similar to what would be the non-stick coating on cookware, for example. So they're fluorine-containing polymers that are highly repellent.
Okay.
They shed water, they shed oils and greases and that kind of stuff.
Got it.
And it's actually a very important part of bunker gear, of turnout gear. You don't want a lot of water absorption. You don't want to be weighted down a lot of water. You want to be able to repel hydrocarbons and oils and things like that because they become flammable if they get embedded into the fibers. And there's also a good possibility that they prevent contamination for all the other carcinogens that are in the air. You know, they don't allow contaminants to get embedded into the gear as easily. So it's a very important part. Unfortunately, the PFOA has found to be what we call bioaccumulative, which means that it doesn't break down very easily. So once you get some of it in your body, you don't metabolize it, it doesn't leave your body. And so over time, it builds up. It builds up in your body, it builds up in the environment.
And I'm assuming as it builds up in your body, that's not a good thing.
And high concentrations has been associated with a lot of health risks. That's absolutely true.
Okay.
The health risks have mainly been associated with people that have been making the molecules or people that live in the surrounding area where there's been some water contamination. Not people wearing garments that have been contaminated. Well, because of all the contamination, that chemical's largely been banned and it's been phased out, and it's not in any Milliken products. We don't use that at all. We use a substitute chemical. It's still a fluorine-containing molecule, but it's got a much better health and environmental profile. It breaks down much faster in the environment. It still gives the protection that we need. It still has the low water absorption, still has the ability to repel oils, greases, and dirt.
So it begs the question, Milliken is not using any PFOA. Is any manufacturer of fabric that you know of in the fire service currently using it?
Not that we know of today, no. And again, as Drew said, it's, that chain had been phased out. And so there was word that there was issues in the marketplace. And Milliken took the stance very early on that we were going to move away from very proactive. And there are other countries that are, things like that where folks continue to use it. And then there was the laws actually came into place that said you must move away from it in X number of years. And so then obviously the majority of the manufacturing space had been completely removed of that.
And not to belabor the point, but say I'm an older firefighter and I have a set of gear that's say 10 or 12 or 13 years old. Should I be concerned? Could my gear have it?
Probably a potential.
Yeah, that's depending on when it's manufactured, who manufactured. It may have some potential residue, but just really, I don't think anybody at this point, because Drew and I, we did a very solid literature search.
Yes, I read it.
We monitor all the EPA, CDC, FDA, their guidelines, and we haven't seen enough data to really definitely say that what level gonna cause what degree of harm. Okay. Actually, EPA had just launched a project looking at 57 different fluorochemicals and starting their toxicology data. So at this point, I don't know if anybody can definitively say what level of risk you're definitely at. But we, as a ethical manufacturer, we have long decided to move away from that type of risk.
Right, and the absence of evidence isn't the evidence of absence. In other words, rather than take that risk, Milliken said, we're not even going to go there.
That's correct.
Exactly. I just want to point out that this is not the chemical that's on the fabric. It's a building block of that chemical.
Okay.
So it's a very, very tiny amount would be on the fabric.
Okay.
And so, the exposure risks that have really been brought up by the EPA and some highly publicized legal proceedings and things like that have really been when this chemical was being used. The people actually making the molecules have been exposed, and that the workers and then the surrounding environment where it wasn't disposed of properly.
Right.
Also, PFOA has been used as a firefighting foam, and used as industrial lubricants, as processing aids, and all that stopped. So it's much more likely that contamination would be caused due to that rather than an extremely small amount, maybe on old bunker gear.
Oh, good.
Let me also add a little bit to what you were talking about, and as
the chemist guys getting excited.
let me kind of explain. I wanted to add that the process, really for people to understand what it means by the most ethical company. What is our process we use to decide what material to use, what fiber to use, or finish we use, or dye we use, to that will really have the least impact, not only to people's health, but to the environment. So we have a typical risk assessment. Every time we use a new material, we not only understand specification of the material we will buy, but we understand what is impurity and what are those potential risks, look at the data, and we really have our material, have a scientist like Drew and myself, who have 100 PhD like Drew and myself in Milliken. So we understand the chemistry. We also have an environmental group. Then we have people like David who understand the end user, like firefighters, industrial workers, and with the people that use the product to understand the usage pattern. What is a possible exposure? So bring all the group together and also our manufacturer. So we'll not only protect the people going to use the product, we're going to make sure our manufacturing associated people who work in the plant making the fabric, they don't have any exposure. We're going to protect our worker. We're going to look at all the water, air, make sure we don't pollute our environment. So those combined is what we call Milliken risk assessment. So we make sure the product we use really meets the highest standard of health, environment, our customer, and our community around us.
And I hope you don't mind if you're out there and you want to talk more about fire resistive, I get it. But this is a big conversation we're having in the fire service right now. So it's important that while we have men and women with us here in this room, but more importantly, these two guys that can answer the question honestly, forthrightly, and comprehensively, we take advantage of it. So if you have more questions, please go to the Milliken website, Shulong or Drew. The message will get to them. I guess there's probably a question. They'll get to these guys and they'll get back to you because it's a complicated, wickedly complicated problem. And I do appreciate you. Hey, this is their dime, and they're allowing me to occupy that time for you because they want to educate you about what your options are, right? And one of your options is Milliken. And so ethics matter, the products matter, the specifications matter, the diligence and the adherence to it matters. You know, the Hippocratic Oath is first do no harm. Well, first part of that is determining what potentially can do harm, right? And that Milliken takes that extra step, and they always have, and they always will. So here's the next big question for you. And Mike, if we're getting more in, I just had one other question before we get to Mike and what's coming in across the wire. Okay, we hear fire resistant all the time. Great term. And we hear inherently fire resistant. And what does that mean? In other words, what does inherently fire resistant mean? I mean, in no respect, that's a big
term.
That's a big term. What's that mean?
Unfortunately, there's not a dictionary definition.
Okay.
There's not a universally accepted definition.
Give us the firefighter definition.
I think most people would define inherently flame resistant as a material that by its nature is flame resistant, and you don't have to add a fire retardant chemical to it.
Okay, so here's the $64,000 question, and that's about what a set of bunker gear costs today. So, just kidding. It's expensive stuff, right, Mike? So, how many times, this is a big question. Mike worked at the FDNY, legendary Gordon Bennett winner, one of the most experienced firefighters on the face of the planet right now, and you can tell because he's got the experienced firefighter walrus mustache, which is prerequisite. Just tease him, Mike. So, but how many jobs would a guy in the Bronx or Brooklyn go to on average while you were out on a 123 truck?
In a year?
Yeah.
Probably each guy would probably go to 30 or 40 good. I'm talking about good working fires, not just the smoke and the exposures, you know, from a cooking fire or an oil burner, but I'm talking about fire out the windows and all that. Each guy on the crew probably got 25 to 30 working fires a year. You know, they went to about 140, 150 in a year.
So if we're talking about gear, right, and we're talking about cancer and exposure and Milliken and their fabric, and okay, so I buy a Milliken 71 outer shell, and I go to 25 jobs, and I wash it 25 times. How good's my gear for fire 26? How good is it?
Yep. So the great news is that, we do a lot of wash down testing and a lot of protocol to the standards. And that gear will be as good if it's maintained properly and used correctly. As again was talked about earlier, you can get buildup on that gear. So if the gear is not clean, if there's things on the surface of that gear that will burn, the gear will burn. So assuming that the firefighters are taking care of the gear, following proper protocol, making sure that gear is clean, responding to that 26 fire, it should perform as it did on fire number 1.
Wow.
The flame resistance will never wash off. I think it's a property of the material. It's not a coating that comes off. It's a property of the material. It's not going to be gone. The only thing you can do to mess it up is if you wash it with like fabric softeners and stuff like that, those can build up on the outside of the gear, and those can be flammable. So you have to be careful. You have to follow the wash instructions.
So
Instructions, that's tough for a fireman.
Right? So the garment, literally the fabric's gonna wear out before it loses its fire resistance.
Yeah, the integrity of the garment.
So you're gonna wear out your knees, you're gonna wear out your creases.
Holes and tears.
So that goes to the next question. So we're always talking about cleaning, right? So we get stuff in our gear, right?
Yeah.
We kneel down and stuff, and some of that stuff is ugly stuff. So like, and my wife never listens to me talk, so I know she's not listening. And I know she cleans my stuff, but every now and then I look and I can see, I'm a car guy, and I can see like where I was kneeling in oil or grease, where I was kneeling in transmission fluid, or you know what I mean, or my polo still hasn't.
Probably we need to get you some of the good Milliken oil resistant fabric.
There you go. I'm making a pitch for mechanics, but I can see where my my clothing, it's clean, but it's not. That stuff is still in there, right? Mm-hmm. And I worry about that, right? So how do I know that this stuff? I mean, how do I know all the stuff that is? How do I know it's clean?
Yeah, clean. A lot of the people just use their visual appearance, visual.
Right, but I mean,
look at.
Is there anything that you guys like the fabric holds that stuff, right?
That's right. So Milliken is really different from most of the other textile manufacturers, especially in the US, where the state-of-the-art analytical equipment. I don't know about you, the chance to see. We have equipment that costs $100,000 to millions of dollars. So at the best equipment in the world that allow us to basically analyze. If you do have something your eye cannot see, those substance that you may be concerned, we have ability to measure it down to the ppb, that part per billion level. So
well, that's
so it's basically an MRI for fabric. An MRI.
So you do that, and that's great. If I could bring my gear.
I
can't bring. Right, I'm not bringing my gear.
At the firehouse, and that's a challenge. That's a challenge that's faced every day. Is truly to Shulong was saying, to really know, you've got to do some pretty elaborate laboratory type tests, analytical. There's things out on the marketplace, and there's a lot of cleaning service and things. And again, you're not going to ever know for sure unless you go and do a destructive test. So that's the unfortunate place where we are today.
So, but what I thought was interesting, when Drew was taking me, this is a cool place. If they ever invite you to come visit, this is a cool place, Mike. You would dig this place. Got a good gym, good food, coffee, lots of coffee.
Coffee bar.
Good coffee bar, right? Yeah, I've had 18 cups, so I'm just getting warmed up. One of the things they showed me on that wall was that Milliken fabrics are made in such a way or designed in such a way so that the dirt stuff gets like out, like it.
Soil releases. Yeah.
Soil releases, yeah, soil releases. So if I buy my outer shell from you or my moisture barrier or whatever, is it going to have that quality in it? Does all our
So kind of what Shulong was talking about is we have the analytical equipment to test, to see how easy soil releases from fabrics. And we can design soil release treatments so that soil does get in and we wash down easily.
Is that showing up on the screen? Did everybody know that Molly just sent you a thing on Facebook?
No.
Don't worry about it, bro. It ain't bothering us. And I hope Molly's your wife, because that was some picture. Okay, so the fabric's actually made intentionally with the idea that it's going to release the soil more readily.
That's right.
Outstanding. Outstanding.
Yeah, there's a combined study, the NFPA and the other group,
Firefighter,
NIST, NIOSH, UL,
I don't know,
they all got acronyms.
okay, there's another acronym. They've gone together on a PPE cleaning validation study.
Oh, yes,
It's
yeah,
underway
absolutely,
now.
absolutely.
Fire-
So hopefully when
Firefighter
that's-
Foundation, that's right.
Firefighter Foundation. When that gets done, we'll have a better definition of how clean is clean, and not only from a standpoint of having hydrocarbons on it that could be flammable, but more to having carcinogens on it from the smoke.
Right, important stuff.
And so hopefully that'll be finished soon, and we can get some clarification on how to clean, what the best practices for cleaning, what are the do's and don'ts.
Well, that's a huge question for us, right? Because we're going down this road and we want to do it right. And this stuff is expensive. It's expensive. At the end of the day, it's expensive. So we'll keep going down that road about gear and expensive. What is the lifespan of gear? And I know it's probably usage dependent, but we used to be told, and Mike can back me up on this, that if we wore our gear out in the sun, it got degraded. The sun would degrade our gear and shorten its lifespan. Is that true?
It still is. It still is today.
Okay. So if I got a set of gear and I care for it fairly well, and I go to Mike's the extreme, 25 fires a year. Obviously, FDMY is a busy place. Detroit, probably Philly, Trenton. There's jobs. There's men and women out there who are getting that amount of fire. The rest of us are probably hitting 10 jobs in that range, between 10 jobs for such a year, which would be, respectable. That's what we're doing. So gear is good for how long then? I mean, how long should we keep a set of gear? And I know when I used to take trips, I would come back and my wife used to put it in the dryer and shrink it because it wouldn't fit.
Different problem.
Yeah.
How long is gear?
So Chief, I would say, obviously, as you mentioned, it's going to be different for every department, for every, really for every firefighter, depending on how often they're going to be washing it, how often they're going to be using it, to what degree they're going to be using it. Do they have an extra set of gear? Obviously, a lot of departments have started to move to 2 sets of gear to make sure that we can continue to clean the gear properly.
It's extremely important.
Absolutely. And then another piece of it too is, are you wearing your bunker gear for all calls, or are you wearing another set of gear that may be better suited for that hazard? So obviously you're going to extend the life of your bunker gear, which is the most expensive piece of gear. If you do have some other type of PPE that's better suited for that hazard that you might be going to. So I think the lifespan can completely be all over the map.
Which, Mike, unless you got something to jump in with, you're.
I did get a question. Somebody texted me a question, and I just thought it was very interesting. And it was with the wound bandages that we saw earlier. Shu, I think, said that one of them had a clotting factor in it. And the question was, is that available? Because there was another active shooter in a school today. Is it available commercially, and can it go into active shooter kits?
We do have a medical product that really promotes the stop bleeding. So there is one product, it's commercially available. So I recommend you go to our Milliken website and go to our medical business and to find out more information. Or you can send Sue or myself an email or direct to the right person.
It's not retailed at the moment. It's sold through hospitals, but we can check on that and see if that's going to be available.
That's right. We'll provide the information. Hopefully we'll find the right source.
Unfortunately, in the world we live in today, there was another active shooter down in, I think, northern Maryland or southern Maryland, down in Maryland today, in another high school. And he shot two students and was engaged and taken out by the school resource officer. But this person just sent me a text and said, ask if that's commercially available, because we'd like to put it in some active shooter kits if it helps with the clotting and maybe help save someone's life.
Certainly.
Yeah. So we'll definitely follow up with that.
Yes.
Okay.
So we were talking earlier, I was walking through with my friends here, and we were looking at NFPA 70 compliant, ARC compliant clothing, which Mike and I talk all the time about ESS floors. We talk about high voltage automobiles, solar panels, there's a plethora of equipment today,
Yeah.
which is high energy, right? And Drew was telling me that our gear is pretty much there, but our station wear and our t-shirts that we respond in, not so much. So where do you think in the future we're heading? We got about 10 minutes left, so it kind of it's easy to talk about the past and things we need to worry about the past, but if we want to move the needle, we have to be generative in our speech, right? In other words, and speech creates the future. So we know we've got this issue with energized equipment. What's Milliken doing? And I know you've got product out there, ResQ product out there that's UL 70 compliant. For the fire service, how accessible is that, right? And I highly recommend, if you're interested in this topic, Steve Green from Seattle will be doing a class at FDIC. Steve's got a whole new program about firefighters. He's working with Rex Morris out of FDNY ResQ 1, and they're putting together teams that are going to respond to high energy storage units. In other words, utility box fires that we get where, Con Ed or whoever does your power, they have incidents all the time.
Right.
So Steve has put together, like we've got medics and we've got squads and we've got, crews that do trench. Steve's come up with this concept for energized equipment responses, but I think Steve and our teams right now are rolling out either in streetwear or maybe technical rescue gear or PPE, right? Bunker gear PPE. So tell us a little bit about, because I thought that was fascinating.
So obviously we do a lot in the 70E market, as you mentioned, and we've got a lot of our West Tex products are really, kind of at the forefront there, and we're really the market leader in that space. There's actually 2 products from our ultra soft fabric, which are 70E rated products, and those are actually certified to 1977. So we'll have to take a look as well to see, what other certifications those fabrics might need. But those are 2 products, and kind of this goes back to what we were talking about at the beginning, that, the nice thing about Milliken with its wide range and diverse portfolio is that we can take technologies and fabrics that are used in other spaces and easily kind of bring those into the fire service space and make sure that they are meant for, the activity and the hazard that's going to be involved there. So again, I think really the exciting thing is this is kind of the beginning, this is kind of the start. What you all will see, from a fire service industry as far as Milliken and the ResQ brand. So I think, really we've got some portfolio of product that's been out for 20, 30 years in the fire service space, but I think really the innovative products are what you're really going to start to see coming up. And that's exactly what you just said, what's the future look like? And to be honest, we think the future looks very bright. We're honored to be a part of this industry. We take a lot of pride, in what we do for protecting those who protect us. And that's a mantra that we try to live out every day.
Yeah, and we honestly appreciate the fact that they do so much. You guys do so much research, and you spend the time to do it the right way, right? I mean, it's very refreshing. It's great to be asked to come out and look at this stuff and these guys are real chemists. He was going down the wall, and I saw one of those alphabet letters, one of those words that got like 26, 27, 28 letters in it. I said, I bet you can't say that in 2 seconds. He goes, Essel, Bessel, 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 Bessel.
Well, the problem is, you bet him $15, and I couldn't stop you fast enough.
It was 10.
I knew that was a losing
It was
bet.
10. And Kelsey and Durham liked your photo. Just giving poor Steve a hard time. So obviously we're going to be looking at electrical hazard. We're going to be looking more at the biohazard. We're going to be looking at all kinds of opportunities. And here was a kind of our point. Jeff and I were talking about this at dinner last night, and Dave, and we were talking about the fact that, and Michael laughed. Say we're going to buy a rescue unit, right? A squad, or even an ambulance, or even just a pumper truck, right? We're going to buy a pumper, right? And we've got, I don't know, let's say an average fire department, we've got 10 or we've got 30 of them, right? How long will we spend speccing that pumper, Mike?
Oh, year and a half?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and that's at the fast track, right? Gear, the stuff that you put on your body to protect you from biological, chemical, heat, keep you from overheating so that your blood doesn't produce extra clotting factors and cause you to have a heart attack early, because that's what happens is your body overheats. It starts to produce more clotting factor, your core temperature. Denise taught us that. So how much time and energy will we put into speccing that product?
Price.
Price. Say price.
Price.
Price, yeah.
Just doesn't make sense.
We gotta look good, show up.
Yeah.
Got a nice truck to drive in.
Yeah, you know, yeah, the gear, what this talk was about today was letting you know that when you go to any of the great folks that make bunker gear out there, that make station wear out there, that make, you know, fatigue uniforms out there, that you can ask them to use the fabrics that you want in that gear. We get down to the color red. I remember having meetings for hours about what shade of red we wanted to paint the fire truck, right? Mike's like, I'm not lying.
Bobby, we were talking about electricity earlier, and you think about a lot of the footwear that we're wearing. The biggest risk in today is maybe step potential. That's when the ground becomes energized. And are we wearing dielectrically correct footwear? And has the footwear been rated to any dielectrical? Because I know a lot of the footwear that is being worn today, take, you know, leather boots and so forth that you're wearing on a fire, most of those are rated because that's part of the requirement. But if there are non-rated boots, you know, that could be a risk as you respond to an electric car, that ground becomes energized, you become one with that circuit and make a complete, you step into that zone of electricity. So those are things that we need to be concerned about as we go forward with footwear, you know, gloves and so forth. So I think again,
Hoods, we're talking about
all kinds
hoods.
of hood technology.
Hoods are very different. You know, arc hoods are very different than firefighter hats. So you got to make sure that you're not wearing bunker gear if you're doing a highly energized thing. It's, you know, you don't have the right face gear.
But the problem is we roll up on a Tesla, no respect to Tesla, it could be a Chevy Bolt, it could be whatever. Those are highly energized pieces of equipment. When we walk into a home that's got a charging station or solar panels, those are highly energized environments. So we don't have the time to run back out, you know, and
Change gear.
change out. So, which is fascinating. So I like the Milliken folks. I think you make a great product, and I'm running Anytown USA Fire Department. And I'm speccing my gear, and I'm looking for new boots, and I'm looking for gloves and things like that. How do I know that? Because obviously my fabric doesn't say Milliken on it, right? And how do I know what I'm getting? How do I find that out? In what would you recommend we do as we're looking at this stuff? Like, I never even heard that term. What is it?
Dielectric.
Yeah,
Dielectric.
dielectric. Not the smartest guy on the panel.
So Chief, one thing I always say when I'm in a department, and sometimes when I tell them that, you know, I have a textile background and obviously want to help them out from a fabric standpoint to understand what the fabrics are doing for them, they tend to ask more questions.
Right.
And then they'll apologize for asking those questions, and I immediately say, please don't apologize for asking questions. That's the only way that you're going to get a product that really is going to service you the best, is to continue to ask those questions. So, you know, as far as how do I get to a spec where I know what I need, the best thing to do is to reach out, you know, and to ask those questions. And we want to be a resource. We want to be, you know, and that's, you know, what Shulong and Drew, you know, for these white papers. There's going to be another white paper around cardiac events and heat stress. And so that should be coming out here shortly, right before FDIC, we hope. But, you know, those are all, they're the hot topics, but at the same time, we want to make sure that questions are coming off of, you know, the work that these guys are doing, and make sure that folks are continuing that dialogue, and that we're able to give them, you know, if I don't know the answer, which I'm not going to know the answer to everything, you know, there at the station, but I definitely have the resources within Milliken to come back and get that answer, you know, and get that back to them as soon as possible.
That's a huge resource for you. The worst thing in the world is to have a question and not ask it. That's the biggest mistake you could possibly make.
Thanks, Kevin.
Go ahead, Uncle Mike.
I just, one more question I got, Bobby. Do they make a hood?
So currently we don't have a hood on the market today.
We make fabric, not
we
hoods.
make a lot. We make a lot of fabric. So actually, interesting enough, I don't think we've mentioned this yet. So Milliken is also unique in that we do a lot of woven fabrics, but we also have knit capabilities in house. We do non-woven, and we also have quilting within Milliken as well. So there's a lot of technologies and capabilities that Milliken has under one roof that really sets us apart in the industry.
So we're going to go over just a few minutes, so bear with us. But the hood question's a big question. What Mike's asking is really specific. In other words, is there a Milliken fabric out there that is better for hoods? Because when we look at our PPE, the hood is the lowest rated piece of PPE we have. Years ago, there was called the Cliff Reed hood.
Yeah.
Cliff Reed was a captain down there in Houston, Texas. His boy is now a battalion chief, which shows you how freaking old I am. But anyway, Cliff had a bunker gear for your head. It was bunker gear for your head. And everybody laughed at him. But he may have been ahead of his time in some ways, right? So is there a fabric that you're looking at, and I don't want to give you trade secrets out here, but are we advancing there? Is there going to be something that's better than what we're doing today?
I don't think we were very much aware there are new hood in the marketplace to reduce the particulate infiltration into your body, and we are actively looking at opportunity to not only reduce the particulate, but all the other carcinogen outgas.
And particulates are interesting. You just mentioned that. We really hit on that too
we
much.
didn't talk much about that. No.
Particulate, nanoparticulates, which are really, really tiny ones,
Right.
that stuff can go through your fabric, get in your system, right?
Correct. And also some molecules, the outgas, not just a particle, but it's a single molecule, like a gas you don't see, you don't feel it, but it can get on your skin.
Like hydrogen cyanide.
Yeah, it's well studied. In the paper that Drew and I wrote, we reference a couple of papers. You can read academic papers. Really look at the different carcinogen actually can get on your skin and get into your bloodstream.
Now, isn't that the cyanide is one of those chemicals, though,
Cyanide,
right?
and then also PAH is a very common one. Polyaromatic hydrocarbon is one of the most common ones coming out of the outgas of fire.
You don't want that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Complicated, but those are
That's why we have this. So if I get a PA on me, what happens to me?
Well,
In layman's terms, is it cancer? Is it aplastic anemia? Is it what is it?
You don't typically and feel anything different, but it does increase your risk of getting cancer
over time, over many
it's
years.
It's a known cancer-causing chemical.
So it's a known carcinogen, but it makes years of exposure and it builds up. So it's important that you.
That's our issue. This is all cumulative.
It's cumulative, so it happens.
It's important you decontaminate your gear. It's important you don't go into the fire even after it's out without gear on. It's important that you don't bring your gear back into your station. Go eat dinner or something. All those best practices that are coming out now about how to treat fires as hazardous material events all the time. And smoke is toxic. Smoke is really, really toxic. If it gets on you, you need to get it off. You need to shower. You need to get your gear off as soon as you get out of the fire.
But what's important, and why I'm glad we're here with folks like Milliken, because they're going to be talking to the folks that actually make all the things we wear, right? And things we use, whether it's the tubs, the containers, whether it's the concrete cloth. They're making that
Floor
stuff.
you're walking on, the furniture you're sitting on.
Right.
Upholstery.
These folks are making it, right? So if we want to have clothing, for the generic term clothing, in order to do our jobs, other than structural firefighting, structural firefighting is critically important. I want you focused like a laser on getting us the stuff that's the most particle resistant, that's the most moisture wicking, that's the best thermal protection, that's the lightest weight, that's the most breathable. We want all that. That's a no. It's the unknowns. It's the risks it's the holes we can't see, right? It's the problems we're not. I want that other gear. I want it to reduce stress. I want it to wear better. I want it to have arc resistance. I want it to have bloodborne quality. And I want it in an hour. But you know what I mean?
Do you want a chief also?
Right. And there's probably a lot of stuff that I'm missing out there, And so the folks who are hearing this today, go to Milliken's website and send them your suggestions, send them your questions, send them your ideas. You know, there's a fascinating story. The Exxon Valdez hit the rocks in Alaska and at Purdue Bay, and terrible leak, right? And for 25 years, that oil sat on that water and in that sand. Greatest minds in the world, these kind of guys, couldn't figure out how to get that oil out. It was too cold, they couldn't make it work. You know who figured it out? A guy who poured concrete figured it out. Because when you're pouring concrete, you got to vibrate the concrete so it doesn't set up too fast and it separates it. So he said, well, what about if we vibrate the water with the same thing that vibrates the concrete? Bingo. 25 years later, a guy who used a trowel for a living figured it out, won the prize. And you know what kind of cat he was? He took the money, he donated it to the cleanup efforts, and the only money he kept was so he could fly out and see what his good work did. He gave all the prize money away.
Great story.
You're that guy. You're sitting there right now saying, I need a fabric that does this. These guys are probably working on something that does that in some way, or it makes plastic clearer, or it makes stuff not stink when we sweat. But it's going to make sense for you. You might be a nurse or a part-time, and you might say, hey, that anti-stink thing would be fantastic if we put it into whatever, wound care, dressings. You know what I mean? You're that person. You got the question. These folks want to hear what you're thinking. That's why they wanted to come on today, not to tell you about the great stuff they're selling and stuff, and that's important, and you need to know about it. But they also want to talk to you. They honest to God want to talk to you. And if you don't take the opportunity, shame on us. You know, I'm old. I got 1 foot in the box, so I don't buy green bananas anymore. I'm so old. But you out there that got 20 years ahead of you, 30 years ahead of you, ask the question now. Get going. Reach out. These are good people. They're going to be at FDIC.
That's right.
They're going to be hanging out. They would love for you to stop by the booth, touch their stuff, play with their stuff. And let them know what you think, and let them know what you think we might need in 5 or 10 or 15 years.
Or with 1 hour.
Yeah, or an hour, right? You know, and if you don't dream big, if you don't ask big questions, you know, aim small, hit small, right? Think big. Like if we could have perfect gear, if we could have, you know,
What would it be?
what would it be? What would it do? How would it feel? What would it look like, right? And those are the questions to ask. Those are the conversations to have. And remember, and I have no qualms about saying this, I'm a diehard nationalist, America first person. And I don't care. If you're not, good for you. Go wherever you like it better. I like it here. So this is an American company founded by an American family that's employing American workers at American plants, building products for American firefighters and firefighters worldwide that work, that are made with the highest ethical standards to the specs that we're asking for. They're not making this stuff up. Dave wants to talk to you. You know, Jeff wants to talk to you. So please go to the Milliken website, take a look at it. It's a 150-year-old company with an incredible legacy.
Yep.
We'll
be in booth 436, I believe, at FDIC. So
easy to find, 436.
Yeah, 436.
Just ask for Milliken. No, just ask for Milliken, and they'll be at FDIC. Mike, you got something?
Just ask them to give the website one more time so our people know where to go.
Sure, it's www.milliken.com.
2 L's.
2 L's.
.com. And the other thing to look at on that website, which I thought was really cool, is that they've got a thing on lean manufacturing, how they've tied it into some of their ethical principles to where they've created the Milliken way, right? So if you've got a small business, like you're a small manufacturer on the fireside, making a tool, making whatever you're making, right? They can help you manage your business better.
That'll come in and do that for you.
Yeah, dig it. And they're all about it. We didn't even talk about helmets and all the other stuff. And I'm sure Milliken is involved in, you know, the products that go into our helmets and everything else. So these folks are these are insiders. These are team players. They're great people. I had a wonderful time. It was
Thank you for coming.
Oh, no, it was a blessing. I had an absolutely great time. FDIC is like tomorrow.
Yeah.
So it's
Springtime though.
Yeah, yeah. My wife one time we were at a party and one of her sisters said, when is FDIC? And she said spring, and she walked away. And happy first day of spring,
Yes,
everybody.
yeah.
And also
Finally.
tomorrow's a really important day. And a quick personal note: tomorrow is National Down Syndrome Day. And if you know somebody who's got a Down syndrome child, and many firefighters do, if you've got family that are Down syndrome people, they're some of the coolest people in the world. If they come to FDIC, they get a pass. They don't have to pay if they want to come look at the fire trucks. If you're in Indianapolis, we'd love to see your Down syndrome children, your brothers and sisters that may have Down. We'd love to have them come. They don't have to pay. They're our guests. They're beautiful people. So that's our gift to you in the Down syndrome community. One of the most beautiful communities out there. They're probably the most incredibly joyful people you'll ever meet. And they love us firefighters, and we love them. So please bring them to FDIC. And if you're coming, I know Jeff will be there. I know Dave will be there. Are you guys coming to FDIC?
They're trying to get there, Rudy.
And on it, but
I know they're gonna be there now, probably.
Yeah,
Probably
they
the
heard
hurricane's on the
chemist-
problems here.
They heard a chemist to come for free too.
No, you cannot compare a chemist to a Down syndrome kid. That's off base. There's even some bridges I won't cross. So, but yeah, right. And that's saying a lot. But thank you so much for joining with us today. This is the Milliken Corporation. They're located right here in Spartanburg, South Carolina. They're a great corporation. They're building products for us. Check out what they're doing with their fire-resistant products. ResQ, R-E-S-Q, ResQ, pretty cute. Look at what they're doing there. It's great stuff. Spec your gear like it matters. Spec your gear like you spec your trucks, like you spec your engines, like you spec your rescues. Put in the time and the energy to make sure that you get what you need and that it's going to work where you do your work. These folks will help you. Hey, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you to our great sponsors. We hope you have a great first day of spring. We hope to see you at FDIC, and be careful out there.